Coach, good to see you again.
Good to see you again,
Looking
my friend.
great. And, of course, Pat McMurtry and Trent Hendricks standing by with Rocky Boyman over there, and we'll talk to them in just a few moments. And if you want more of Tony Gibson and the Marshall Thundering Herd, remember you can go to your Watch ESPN menu, and the feed of the podium is still there, and you can watch the rest of that. Meantime, let's talk Dukes here. You guys go 9-4 in your first season overall, 4-4 in the conference. You made believers of your peers. They picked you to win the Sun Belt East this year. What'd you learn from last year, if anything, that helps you springboard into a championship this year?
Yeah, you learn a ton. From year two, you're a very different team than you were in year one, especially with all of the change that we went through. 64 new guys.
Bob Chesney is the second head coach, as James Madison head coach for the football team. This is his second season. A season ago, that was his first season. Right now,
from a lot of your losses,
this is his second.
Lessons and a lot of strength, and that's been a big part for us. Is just being able to finish some games that we're up and understanding what we got to do that. That's a big piece of our off-season regimen has just been that of finishing drills, finishing practices, finishing everything, and that will carry on into football camp as we move forward here. But I thought that our guys did a nice job for a group of 64 new guys coming together, a whole coaching staff come together, recruiting department coming together, nutrition coming together, player development, so many different elements being added new. I thought our guys handled it really, really well. In the end, with the first ever bowl win in school history was something we're proud of, and good momentum to carry into the offseason.
Victory over Western Kentucky in the Boca Raton Bowl, and you've been successful everywhere you've been. I don't know that anybody's kind of gone through the step ladder. The only thing you didn't do was the junior college,
right.
But you did D3, D2, FCS, won championships at every one of those levels. Now you're starting season 2 in FBS. Is it all the same, or any profound wisdom that you draw from your previous experiences at quote-unquote lower levels that helps you at the FBS, or is it all the same? Winning is winning no matter where.
Yeah, I mean, the winning part, but how you get there is just very different every place you've been. There's no exact recipe. There's no magic bullet that you fire and it works in every environment and every place you've been. Everything is very different. You're never that same team. Even from what we were last year to this year, we'll be a very different team, though, call for a very different recipe. But ultimately, I think the true camaraderie and the ability to care for these guys and the ability for us to stay together, that has to ring true, especially in a very transactional world that we live in at this point in time. We got to make sure that these commitments to each other and that our relationships are built and we really truly know who each other are, because in the end it will allow us to play for and with each other in very crucial moments when that pressure's on.
If you want to discover James Madison's secret to success last year, you don't have to look much further than one particular statistic, and that's turnover margin. You led the country at 1.54 turnover margin, or 1.54 more turnovers per game than your opponent. I think you threw only 4 interceptions. You picked 29. You were also number 3 in the country in quarterback sacks. Can you do that again?
Yeah, we better, right? Yeah, you always hope you can. And I think that last year we had a very special group of guys, and we played some really high-level defense and some high-level offense. And at the same time, we protected the football and we took the football away. That has to, ring true if there's going to be any success as we go through this year. So that will be a big piece of what we focus on. That's a big piece of what we focused on through all of spring, and we'll continue to focus on as we go through the preseason. But absolutely love the commitment from these guys. I love their energy that they're bringing to it, and whatever the expectations might be, outside of the program, they're much higher inside the program, and that's what sets our standards that we live by every day.
Absolutely. Let's do the position breakdown. We'll start on offense with your quarterback. Alonzo Barnett is actually preseason's second team, but only you can answer. Is he even going to play this year, coming off a knee injury at the end of the season, the regular season finale? So you can answer that. I'm going to ask you to answer that. And also you bring in Matthew Sluka, who was a star quarterback for you at Holy Cross, was at UNLV last year and left. Now he's with you. And Camden Coleman comes in from Richmond. So you got some intriguing options if Barnett can't play.
Yeah, we do. And I think when you look at the statistics of those 3 quarterbacks, over 16,000 yards between all of them, 54 touchdowns on the ground, 171 touchdowns together, all total with those 3 guys. It speaks volumes of them playing in high-pressure situations and having experience doing it. Alonzo Barnett will certainly play this year, and he's on track, and he's doing a great job, and rehabs and handles himself in a very professional manner. And I think the competition in that room is exciting to have, because we didn't have it quite like that a year ago.
Yeah, it's amazing competition with 3 very qualified candidates. Your running back room, preseason All-Sun Belt first team. George Pettaway comes back. Also, Wayne Knight, who's a backup. Ayo Adei, who was a 1,000-yard rusher at North Texas, got hurt, did not play last year. He comes back this year.
Yeah, 8,000 yards and 94 touchdowns amongst that group that's left. And when you look at it, you say there's only one starting running back in George Pettaway that's back, but a lot of those guys did some heavy lifting for us as well and have at previous schools. So excited about what that group looks like as well. But that's a deep room. That's a tough room. They are fun to watch and they are competitive, but they are also really close friends that really look at each other's successes and find a great way of celebrating each other. And I think that's what the best teams and position groups do, is when someone has success, you have the ability to celebrate them and not look in a jealous manner. And that's what those guys do in a better way than anybody I've been around.
Coach, it looks like in the wide receiver room, you're going to rely on some transfers here. Nick Gennaro, Richmond, comes in. He's had over 2,000 yards receiving in DeGennaro, I think. I might not have said his name right the first time. DeGennaro, over 2,000 yards receiving with Richmond Spiders. Landon Ellis is another Richmond transfer that you bring in. And Villanova transfer Jalen Sanchez comes in as well. A lot of guys with a lot of catches in other places now playing for you.
Yeah, there's more, and I think in that group there's over 6,000 yards that we're bringing in and over 44 touchdowns. So even though we lost our top 3 receivers from a year ago, we're bringing in some really good experience via the transfer portal. And then there's guys on our current team that I'm excited to watch continue to step up. Guys that maybe were freshmen a year ago that could have that breakout season. So that's a group that just got a lot deeper. And hats off to Coach Harper and Coach Kennedy for being able to get that done.
I think what's really interesting about your transfer portal experience is that I think only 4 of your players were P4 players, and the rest of them are FCS guys, and that's where your roots are from. Holy Cross, you believe in that level, obviously, because you recruit a lot of those players. You did it last year, and you're doing it again this year. So that's not by coincidence, I don't think.
No, it's not. I think that what I found, at least in this 1 year that we've done it, and previous years where we dealt with transfers, is that guys that have played football, and played football in crucial situation and pressure moments, those are guys that will continue to have success. And I think the guys that did not, but maybe high rated and did not make it at that next level and are coming down, we just haven't had as much success with that as we have with the formula that we're going with this year.
I think you're right. I mean, you look at the P4 guys, and nothing against the P4 guys, and this is not a broad sweeping statement, but I do find that a lot of those guys are guys they've been sitting for 2 or 3 years, haven't played. Maybe they were over-evaluated by the recruiting services coming out of high school, and they missed on those guys. And that's not to say that all of them are that, but I agree with you. I'd rather have a guy that's had 70 catches, over 2,000 yards, playing FCS football than a guy who sat for 3 years with no catches.
Yeah, and I think you've got to trust your own evaluations and all of them. And every single situation is different and scenario is different. Every person's different. So ultimately, when it all comes down to it, we need to make sure they're our types of guys. That's the most important thing. And maybe if they were in that situation, but they were just behind some really good players and wanted their chance to shine, and our guys that bring passion and energy and fire to the game that we expect them to, and do it in a relentless manner and a tough, relentless manner, those are things that will always, work themselves out in the long run.
Yeah, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Right. Each player needs an individual evaluation, and that's what's so tricky about the transfer portal, is because that evaluation has to come really quickly because you're competing with other teams for that player's services. Offensive line, you lose 3 starters, but you bring back preseason All-Sunbelt first-teamer Pat McMurtry, who's standing by over there with Rocky, going into his 7th season.
Yeah, phenomenal football player. Just a kid that is poised as can be, a great leader, and just there's not a lot that you're going to throw at him that he hasn't seen, and he's patient with it, he's confident with it, and has
he's at a home games for a football team for James Madison.
He's tough, he's
and Weber State, Georgia Southern, Louisiana, Old Dominion, App State, and Washington State. That's going to be our home games for our James Madison Dukes football team. We'll take on those teams because I think we're
defensive coordinator Kyle Hitchler. You bring him in from Alabama, your previous DC, Luke Hemphill, rejoined with Coach Elko at Texas A&M, who you've been with in the past. But you bring in Collins, so how does this impact your defense?
Yeah, so I mean, we did a lot. You read the stats. We did a lot of things really well last year.
You absolutely did.
Yeah, so we have to continue to do that. There's some things that will remain exactly the same, and there'll be a lot of new wrinkles and twists that show up in there as well. Colin, comes from a different coaching background than what Lyle came from, but at the same point in time, it would be pretty ridiculous to throw it all away and say that there's nothing left to hold on to. So there'll be a lot that we do from a year year ago, and then there'll be even more that we put on these guys' plates to just make sure that we're diversified as well.
Yeah, there's no secret looking back at what you did last year, looking at what you bring back this year. We've covered the offense, but on the defensive side of the ball, you've got all preseason guys at every position group level, starting with the linebackers. Trent Hendricks, who's here today, we'll hear from him in just a few moments. He comes back after 54 total tackles and 3 quarterback sacks last year.
Yeah, well, phenomenal football player, but even more than that, you watch him on this screen and just the energy and the excitement that he plays with. He is, an ultimate competitor. He doesn't only lead his room, he leads the entire team, and whatever you task him with being in charge of, he's not only going to get the most out of himself, he's going to get that out of the people on his team or in his position group as well. And, that's something that, he's a guy that came in here as a Duke and is going to finish his, career as a Duke, and there's nothing better than that.
Secondary, a couple of preseason all Sun Belt guys. Your safety, Jacob Thomas, had 3 picks last year, 73 total tackles on that back line, and also second-teamer nickel DJ Barksdale had a couple of picks for you. And you throw in some transfers, one from Holy Cross as well, and another from William and Mary.
Yeah, I think, again, another group that we know we needed to continue to bolster that group. There's a couple other guys in there that you didn't mention that you'll have a chance to talk about in the world. We'll have a chance to see in the very near future, but it certainly starts, with JT and DJ. Both of those guys sticking with us and staying for this next season. It's a really big deal. JT, again, started his career, with us, came in as a walk-on and worked his way all the way up and will eventually be a captain of this football team. But to watch his growth and watch him not only stop in the run game, but his savviness in the pass game, is phenomenal. And then you watch DJ on this screen right now, and this kid could cover, he can tackle. He's not that big, but he plays way bigger than what he actually is. And he's a fun player to watch, and they're going to have to lead that group of guys that are new, maybe some guys that are a little bit older, but at the same point in time, they're new to our program, and they got to make sure they continue to rub off on these guys like they will.
Contact there when the ball got there. Defensive line, preseason all Sun Belt second team, 315-pound junior, Emmanuel Bush. He comes back on that defensive line. Then you had a couple of transfers. Main transfer, Xavier Holmes, over 123 career tackles with the Bears and 8.5 quarterback sacks in his career. And Colgate transfer, Andrew Taddeo, 4.5 quarterback sacks. These are guys, again, they're FCS guys that you're bringing in to help out.
Yeah, and there's a couple other guys you didn't mention in there as well, but we will talk about them as the year goes on. But it certainly starts with those guys. But Bush, he was a big deal. Being able to hold on to Bush and have him come back and just be that dominant force on the inside. He's tough to block. He's tough to move. And he actually gets after the quarterback really well and just does not. His motor's phenomenal. And he's a great player and a great leader. And we're going to expect a lot from those other new guys and a few others, on that group. But I like our depth in almost every position right now. We understood our team a lot better. I think a year ago when we went into that transfer portal, we didn't really even know who was currently on our team as we started to try to replace those guys that left. And now we at least know every single member of this football team and know their strengths, know their weaknesses, know what they can do, and know what we got to do to fill in the gaps around them.
So how many guys ultimately did you bring in from the portal?
So we ended up, I want to say that we ended up with 30 transfers this year, 26 high school guys. Very similar, recipe to what we did a year ago. It was about 30 transfers with 26 other guys.
That's actually probably about a good low number.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's a good number. I think that you definitely want to continue to develop these younger guys, and at some point we'd like it to be more high school guys than it is transfers. We got to continue to hold on to our guys for that to be the reality of the situation. But I really like where we're at. I think we're in a good spot. I think these guys believe in who they are. They believe in what they can do. Their expectations, again, are far superior than any expectations anybody puts on us from the outside. And I'm excited to watch them, build the standards and just continue to live them every single day to realize these goals.
Yeah, I call it a low number because we hear Tony Gibson standing up there at the podium before you came on, and he's talking about 70 new players. 30 is a manageable.
I know what that's like.
30 is a manageable number, but I love what you got. You got a lot coming back, and you got guys coming in from the transfer portal, and this is why James Madison is picked number 1 in the Sun Belt East. Rocky?
Thank you very much. Sitting next to offensive lineman Pat McMurtry, 7th year, was all Sun Belt first team guy last year, and Trent Hendrick, 54 tackles and a preseason all Sun Belt player. And Pat, I want to start with you. I read somewhere along the line you did not give up a single sack last year. What point did you realize that you hadn't given one up, and what was the process of finishing that season out with something as accomplished as that?
I honestly didn't know until after the year, because you get lost in the game to game, week to week, just kind of grind. So I wasn't really paying attention, but it was a pretty cool stat when I saw it after the year.
No doubt about it. Now you're in your 7th year. What is, and I always like to ask quarterbacks this, just where your growth is. Well, I ask you as an offensive lineman, what is something fundamentally or technique-wise, or something about the game that you know now that maybe you didn't when you were a first or second year player?
I think part of it is definitely just understanding like defense a little bit more, especially D linemen, like what they're seeing, what they might be thinking in certain situations. You know, when you start out, you're just kind of learning on the fly. You get thrown into the fire and just kind of have to figure it out. So I just think like over time, just getting a lot of those reps and just kind of understanding tendencies and stuff like that.
Coach said earlier, 64 new guys on this team. Just tell the folks at home, what's that like having to get to know someone, not just as a player, but as a person in a very short amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely challenging, you know, but I think we do a great job of, you know, not just, you know, the work we do on the field, but just kind of getting the guys together off the field, doing things like that. I think, you know, we do a good job of you know, working when we're on the field, but also just kind of hanging out outside of football and stuff.
And I'll transition to you here. As we talked earlier, your defense was phenomenal last year. All the takeaways, all the sacks. A new defensive coordinator comes in, Colin Hitchler. Just describe a little bit about his scheme and what you like about it.
His scheme is definitely simple, but aggressive and effective. You know, I feel like it allows the guys to use their talents and allow them to just go out and play. You know, you don't really have to think too much. You can just get your little pre-snap read or whatever, and then once you go, you pretty much just go.
So you're a linebacker. I was a former linebacker. Describe to the folks at home just some of the fundamental principles about playing that position. What are the maybe two most important things in your process that you think about playing the linebacker position?
One, I'll say communication. For Rip, you're the quarterback of the defense. You know, as you know, you got to communicate the play, get the front right, get the coverage right in the back end, and then, you know, after you handle all that, you got to do your job. You know, so communication would be the first word, and I'd say the second part is just tenacity. I think that's a good word for linebacker, because like I said, you're forced to do everything. You got to rush the passer, cover, tackle, everything that you have to do on the defense. So, you know, once you do it, you have to do everything on full speed.
And Pat, one last question for you. As Coach talked about, a new quarterback this year. How's that room? Those 2 or 3 guys in that room. How's that shaping up?
I mean, it's been great. You know, it's been pretty cool to watch them. You know, in spring ball, obviously they, you know, all were out there, you know, kind of doing their thing, and then just, you know, seeing them in the weight room and stuff. You know, it's a good group. Like, they work really hard, but just to kind of see how close they all are, it's just kind of been cool to see.
Guys, thanks very much. Have a great season, Matt. A lot of expectations for JMU, but they got the players to do it. I just talked to 2 of them. We'll see how it goes here in the fall.
Absolutely. It's easy to see why James Madison's picked to win the Sun Belt East. Coach, let's take a look at your schedule. Going to open with Weber State, then a big Friday night game at Louisville. That's a big opportunity to grab some headlines by yourself on a Friday night at the start of the college football season. Then you're at Liberty, former Coastal coach Jamie Chadwell there with the Flames, followed up by your conference opener against Georgia Southern. That'll be a big game as far as who ends up winning the East, no doubt. You host West favorite Louisiana on October 11th. Then your ESPN national TV game is at Texas State on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, pretty good.
You got to give me something more than yeah.
That's a pretty good schedule. I think it's one of those schedules that obviously when you look at it, there is no easy week in there, but that's what you want. You want to be tested against the best. You want to test everything about your program against the best. You want to test your strength and conditioning. You want to check, you know, and test just how united your players are, how they fight through adversity, how they fight through tough situations, how they just continue to do the little fundamentals well and better every single week and grow. Learn from every little mistake they make along the way. That's all part of this. And this schedule is unrelenting, right? It is a tough schedule, and it's one that we are very, very excited to get out there and represent the Dukes with.
Yeah, it's a fun schedule. A couple of years ago, James Madison was the darlings of the national media. Can they do that again here in 2025? Remains to be seen, but they are picked to win the East and play in the Sun Belt Championship game. Coach, thanks a lot for being with us.
Appreciate it.
Do appreciate it. Like what you got coming back here in 2025. Let's go to the podium now. Old